Okay, so we're going to talk about some things that I might want to upgrade to. It's called a high extraction basket, $200 each.
I didn't know they were $200 each.
This one is the only one that works this way. It's called the Force Tamper. It's $200.
We have so many grinders.
Yeah, but they're not that grinder.
But doesn't ours put just the right amount of pressure on it even when you push it down all the way?
Well, kind of. The EG1 is a lot different.
That little basket?
Yeah, but it makes a big difference.
There's so many tamps. How many tamps do you need? Okay, next item. Wow.
I might like one better than the other one, and I'm not gonna know unless I try. But I would really like the Subame one.
But this one still works? Why is it almost 3 times the price?
All right, so this is gonna be a little bit of a different video for us, but it's a question that comes along on my channel all the time. And it's, how do I get my partner on board with this whole coffee thing? I remember we had this Mr. Coffee blade grinder, and I was trying to convince you that we should get a burr grinder, even though this other coffee grinder that we had wasn't broken or anything.
And I thought that was crazy. Why? What's the difference between a burr grinder and a blade grinder?
Yeah, we make a lot of jokes about it. We joke about it on our Instagram page all the time, but the tension can be very real sometimes. So it's something that we really felt like would be good and helpful to talk a little bit about. So as Sarah and I were talking about this for another video, actually, the conversation that came to the surface was pretty rich, and we thought it could be helpful to put out there, so we decided to record it. So welcome back to the channel, Sarah.
Thank you. It's fun to be back. I will add a caveat to that, that this conversation is within the context of a long-term committed or married relationship. So if you are in a new relationship or a dating relationship, some of this might be helpful to you, but I think it's important to just recognize that this conversation is within the context of partners that have decided to spend their lives together. So it's not intended to tell anybody what to do, just to invite you behind the scenes of the conversations that have helped us get and stay on the same page in our relationship and with coffee.
Yeah, every relationship is different. So what works for us might not work for you, but the things that we've learned along the way, we hope can be helpful. So we're gonna talk about where we started, we're gonna talk about where we are now, and we're gonna talk about 4 specific things that have been really helpful for us in regards to this conversation. So Sarah, why don't you give a bit of a snapshot about where we started as a couple on this stuff?
Yeah, well, when we got married, we get to celebrate our 10th anniversary this year, and cheers.
Cheers to that.
I knew Justin loved coffee, and I knew you loved it more than I did. We both drank coffee, but you were definitely much more passionate about the whole thing. I was a double girl.
Yes, that's a Canadian thing.
I have heard that.
Yes.
That's 2 cream, 2 sugar.
Yes.
So we both enjoyed coffee. I knew you loved it. It really became a passion of yours over the years.
Yep.
And it was, just something to check off the grocery list for me. And now it's actually become part of your career, and it supports our family. So side note, if you like this video or subscribe to this channel, that's a free way that you can support our business and our family. But that's kind of where we started. And like, I remember when we first got married, you were using that blade grinder, and then he would be trying to use an espresso press to make us coffee, remember?
With the blade grinder.
With the blade grinder. And then he would be explaining to me why a burr grinder would be so much better. And I was like, really? They're just all grinders, aren't they all the same? I was all about efficiency, and it didn't matter to me how good the coffee was. I was going to put cream and sugar in it.
So it was like buying bread.
You'd be trying to make us coffee in the morning, and I'm like, this is taking a long time. But I just respected that you wanted to spend your time doing that. So, okay.
It's funny.
Remember?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But you've really come a long way now. Like, now you're at a point where you have a much deeper appreciation for some of those nuances, and you'll put up with a little bit more pain in the butt of getting it and financial investment into making it great.
Yeah. Well, I'll even make myself an espresso now.
Yeah.
Like he's taught me how to do it, and I will do that. I think I've come a long way in enjoying coffee. And you have come a long way in your understanding and
absolutely
passion for coffee as well.
Yeah.
So that's where we started 10 years ago, was like Enthusiast, really just trying to make it work, newlyweds. And remember when we moved from grocery store coffee to premium coffee?
Yeah, that was a big deal. That was like a whole conversation and decision that we made to start buying this more expensive coffee, going from spending like $12 a bag at the time to like $18 at the time. That even in and of itself was a kind of a, not tense, but you didn't fully understand why we would even do that.
I'm like, we can get this much coffee at Costco.
Yes.
Why would we go and pay $20 a bag for a bag this big? Well, I do think we are a lot more on the same page now. And it still takes effort to stay on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, this is an ongoing thing.
Yeah, I mean, that is a relationship. Like when you decide to spend your life with somebody, it's always an effort to share your life and your vision and your dreams together. So I think 4 key things have really helped us get and stay on the same page. But before we jump into that, I just want to reiterate, we also recognize that different relationships, different income levels, different personalities are all going to hear these things differently. So take or leave what works for you. And we just hope that this is helpful.
Yes. So I think the first thing, you kind of already said it, is we were looking at coffee very differently.
Totally.
In those early days.
Totally.
And I was getting excited. I was getting sucked down the rabbit hole. I was researching things and experimenting.
Because he'd have these crazy setups that I'm like, what is happening here?
Yeah. And it was really this fun realm for me. And really what it was becoming for me was a hobby. And I think that, number one, a lot of people who get into coffee don't recognize it as a hobby. I certainly didn't early on.
Yeah, I didn't either.
And you definitely didn't. Like for you, it was a grocery thing.
Yeah.
It was like, why on earth? He just flushed half a bag worth of groceries down the drain into the compost trying to do this espresso thing. Like, what the heck? So we had very different definitions of what the thing actually was. And for me, once I moved it into a different category and I was able to articulate it to you, it's about equity for the people making it. It's about the experience of doing it. It's a hobby. And that was a mindset shift for us.
Yeah, I think once we got on the same page looking at coffee in a similar way, when we both agree that coffee was a hobby and it's more than a grocery item, that helped us talk about it differently.
And I just want to jump in too. In many hobbies, there is a progressive element to it where you progress into the hobby so far as you're able to spend more money. And it's easy to get sucked into that, but that is a bit of a lie when it comes to coffee as a hobby. Thinking that you're going to get a new espresso machine and it's going to solve all your problems is very rarely the real answer. So I just think it's important to add that buying coffee, nicer coffee, is the best thing you can do to get better coffee. Buying new equipment, it's okay if you want to buy a nice new espresso machine, you want to buy the fancy shiny thing, but you can also buy a very inexpensive espresso machine and make great espresso with it. Mm-hmm. Because I don't want this to turn into, here's how you approach spending more money with your partner. Because that is not always the answer.
Yeah. No, it's more, this whole conversation is more about getting and staying on the same page with what matters to you both.
I think on the whole, the best place that you can put your resources when it comes to coffee is in actually buying just better coffee. Working with coffee roasters that are putting farmers first, making sure that what you're doing is equitable all the way down the supply chain. And when you do that, you get better coffee too.
And that's actually something that I really care about. So when you started to tell me about the difference between the qualities of coffee, that mattered to me. So
yes.
That
did
sort
help
of
us get on the same page.
That invited me into the coffee world, and I got to learn a little bit, and I enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yes.
That brought us on the same page.
Totally.
The next thing that I think has really helped, this is a habit that has really helped.
Yeah.
Helped us stay on the same page financially, Obviously, there's a lot of finances to talk about around a coffee hobby or for a coffee
Any hobby?
enthusiast.
Any hobby,
Or any
really.
hobby.
Yep.
But a habit that has really helped us is that any spending above $50 we talk about before we spend it.
Discretionary spending.
Discretionary spending.
Yeah. Like you don't talk to me every time you go to the grocery store.
No. But like a single item that's more than $50.
Yes.
We talk about. That number will be different for different people. That's not a hard and fast rule. That number just feels comfortable for us. And the only reason we do that is because we want to stay on the same page. We want to be going in the same direction financially. We want to be going in the same direction in every sense of the word because we've decided to unite our lives. So
Yes.
that habit may not be as helpful if you're in a new relationship that's been together for 2 months. You don't need to be talking about those things unless you have decided to spend your lives together. So we want to always be on the same page about what we're doing with our finances because it's part of a bigger picture.
Yeah.
So in the sense of coffee stuff, that habit actually applies to any spending.
Yes.
And it's not restrictive. I probably do more of the spending than you do. It's not restrictive as much as it is freeing.
Yeah.
Because
And that's kind of counterintuitive. It's really not like a pass-fail thing or I need to get my spouse's permission. It's not really about that because the number of times that I will mention something to you or vice versa, and it's the other person saying, no, I don't think you should do that, that like never happens.
it's more of like, do you think this is a good idea? Is now the time to do
Yes.
this? Should we do this?
And what more often happens is the person who came with the idea after we talk it through either says, yeah, I think we should go ahead with this, or you know what, after talking about it, I don't actually think it's as good of an idea anymore. And really, it's just a habit that helps us
Stay on the
stay
same page.
aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing that has been really helpful for us is planning for and saving for and paying cash for larger expenditures. If we decide through that mutual conversation, number one, coffee is a hobby. Number two, I want to get a new piece of equipment at a certain point. How do we get to that point where we actually feel comfortable spending that amount of money that we agreed on a certain thing? For us, we're not comfortable going into debt for that kind of stuff. So I think that
For anything.
for anything. Well, our mortgage.
Well, just our house.
Yeah, just the mortgage. But in general, for stuff like that, we really try and not go into debt. So then how do you get there? Does that mean, oh, I want an espresso machine that costs $2,500 or $5,000? Whatever amount of money is ridiculous in your world, let's go with that. How do we get there? Because I'm never going to wake up and have an extra $5,000 or whatever sitting there that, I don't have a better use for that. We say, okay, it's X amount of money. If we set aside a certain amount of money per month over so many months, then we can go ahead and do this. For me, that has a couple benefits. Number one, sometimes by the time we get to the day, I've actually changed my mind and I'm like, you know what? That's not actually what I want to do anymore. And then you're in a situation where maybe you do have a little bit of a surplus that you can move in another fun direction. And other times, if we actually follow through with that purchase, sometimes it's the type of thing where you have to set a date way out there in the future. And by the time you get there and you can actually wait that long and then get the thing that you've been looking forward to, you have a deeper appreciation for it once you get it.
So that practice of saving what we want to spend on and agreeing on it together and knowing what each other values has helped us stay on the same page.
Yeah, and really it's become more about what are our joint goals as a couple for our lives, for our vacations, for the things that are important to us. It all gets wrapped up and framed in this conversation by staying on the same page with our finances.
Yeah, of how we're planning our spending. Like our dreams are encompassed in how we plan our spending. What we care about, what matters to us, how we give is all encompassed in that planning how we spend. So it's not just about the coffee grinder for your 30th birthday. It's about like in the big picture in our 20s, what were we planning for and dreaming about and saving for?
Yeah.
So planning our spending isn't just about planning for the next thing we're going to buy. It's about planning our future together.
Yeah, and our
being on the
priorities.
and our priorities. So
Yeah.
being on the same page really matters. And I think when you're in a long-term committed relationship or you're in a marriage, that is really important. So that has really helped us.
Next thing and last thing
There's two things in one, something that he did and something that I did.
You were always really good to express interest in what I was interested in. Let's take that burr grinder example. Particle size distribution and how that impacted an espresso shot. And I could just see her eyes glazing over.
Yeah.
But still, she would spit out another question about it to
sometimes
lean in and often you would.
I would try.
Even though I knew kind of a lot of the time that you were kind of not tuning out, but feigning interest, it really did help to bring us on to the same page, because what that did for me was it showed that you cared about what I cared about. And that was something that even when I would sometimes maybe be disappointed that when we actually got to the end of the discussion, we both realized we had to stay for a little bit longer than maybe I thought.
Oh, if we were talking about
a specific thing,
yeah.
Then at least I knew she cared and she was interested in the same thing that I was.
Well, I can say I for sure didn't do that perfectly, and I still don't do that perfectly, because sometimes it's really too much information for me, and I just don't care. But I do care about you, and because I care about him, showing interest and learning about what he's interested in is a way that I get to love him. So I've actually learned a lot from you inviting me in, and I think that's something that you've done well, is you invite me in and you take time to explain what you're doing or why you're doing it. He'll really dumb down his explanations. That makes me sound not very
Well, you're
smart.
not dumb.
It
is a lot of information.
Sometimes it's like a whole other language. And now I can appreciate coffee so much more because of the way that you have invited me in and included me in the journey, and would give me 2 cups of coffee to compare, or show me the physical difference of 2 different grinders, or look at how different these 2 beans are.
Yeah.
It became a shared experience that we do together. And
it really has.
Because we've decided to share our whole lives, showing interest in what you're interested in is an extension of that.
Yeah, and you were easy and fun to bring along for the ride too.
Sometimes.
You know what?
Depends on the time of day.
I wasn't planning on doing this, but Sarah is when she says she's come along for the ride, it sounds like, she just is sitting in the wagon while I'm pulling it along. She is
Sometimes I am.
She's an excellent coffee taster. I once did a blind test for Sarah. I was testing a grinder.
You do blind tests for me a lot.
All the time. Yeah. And I just give her 2 cups and I say, tell me what you think between
Tell me which
these 2
one's
cups.
better.
No information. And she was able to pick out the differences between same coffee, same grinder, different RPM. And she was able to tell me this cup is more astringent. And it was because it was set to a specific RPM. And she could pick it out. You really have a good palate.
Thank you.
Too.
Well, I still don't know what half the stuff is called. And sometimes I don't care and it's all a little much. However, I have enjoyed sharing this hobby with you and doing this together. And it's also become our livelihood.
Yep.
So that's special. It obviously doesn't need to be everybody's livelihood, but that's sort of a look behind the scenes of what helps us get on the same page and stay on the same page. Because I will say we don't do this perfectly and we get misaligned sometimes. And in any healthy relationship, alignment and being on the same page is work and effort. So those are some of the things that have helped us work that out over the years.
Yeah. So we should recap the 4 things.
Yeah.
And they'll be marked in chapters in this video, so you can go back and watch them too. Don't forget to subscribe too if this has been helpful. But first thing, identifying coffee as a hobby. Second thing, our $50 habit. Flex that number up and down, whatever feels good for you. Third thing, plan, save, pay cash for us. And fourth thing was show interest and bring your partner along the journey. And all those being said, that designed more for long-term committed relationships. Every relationship is different. This is just what has worked for us. We hope it was helpful. And I should add, if you have something that's helpful that we totally missed, make sure you put it in the comments too, because that is always helpful and there are perspectives aplenty on this one.
Yes.
So I think for us, whether it's a coffee thing, whether it's another life thing, once we get aligned and on the same page with our spending, that helps us be more aligned as a couple. So we hope that was helpful. We hope your next cup of coffee is fantastic, and we'll see you next time.